Hello, my name is Zainab, and today I am joined by Amna Asif, who is also research executive at Gallup Pakistan. And today we will be talking about Gallup Pakistan's analysis of the World Bank Enterprise Survey 2022, in particular the business environment obstacles that are faced by business and reported in the survey.
So 27% firms chose political instability in Pakistan as their biggest obstacle.
Yes, and within those firms, if we break it down further, we see that 37% of small firms cite political instability as their largest business environment constraint. So it's not just like bigger firms, but smaller firms also face this problem a lot. And within smaller firms, 16% cite access to finance as their biggest obstacle. Later in this video, we will be discussing more in depth about firm sizes and for each type of firm, what the biggest obstacles are. In addition to that, compared to businesses that export more, there are more than twice as many businesses that are non-exporters that consider political instability their largest obstacle. What that means is that for businesses that operate in the domestic market, political instability is a bigger factor compared to those that have most of their customers abroad.
If we look at figure one, the biggest obstacle that we see here is political instability, followed by the finances that we have, then followed by tax rates. So that is very interesting to see how, sometimes we think that there are some other pressing issues like finances, but those aren't actually the most important issues going on at the moment. Political instability is ranks on the top.
Yeah, definitely. Especially in figure one, it is just the data for Pakistan, and we see that for Pakistan, political instability by far at 27% is the largest obstacle that is perceived by firms because this is again responses to a survey, and we see that things that we might think are important, like you said, for example, land or the education of the workforce, are not considered as big of obstacles as political instability is as of 2022. So next, if we look at the top 10 biggest obstacles faced by firms in Pakistan, South Asia, and the world, again, we see overwhelmingly Pakistani firms cite political instability as their largest obstacle, much higher than both South Asia and the world. Um, but on the other hand, if you look at factors like labor regulations or practices of the informal sector, it's very interesting to note, especially for the informal sector, that Pakistan is not firms in Pakistan don't consider it as big of a problem, given that the informal sector in Pakistan is really large. So, is it that the informal sector is not impacting these businesses, or is political instability and access to finance, are these such big obstacles that they are diminishing the problems that companies face from the informal sector? Similarly, if you look at labor regulations, we see that they're not that big a problem for firms in Pakistan compared to those in South Asia and globally, for whom it is a decent sized problem. In figure three, we can see that inadequately educated workforce is not a huge problem for firms in Pakistan. Only about 2% of firms say that, a not enough educated workforce is our biggest problem. But compare that to South Asia and all the countries in the world, and they think of it as a pretty big obstacle. This is interesting because again, we do hear this discourse around that labor in Pakistan is not educated enough, or um, they aren't qualified enough. But here we see that not a lot of firms self-reportedly consider it their biggest obstacle.
I think this is very interesting for policymakers to see because, like a lot of times, they're giving a lot of weightage to education reform or stuff like that. And I think they could look at the things that businesses can see as big problems for themselves and then analyze those and bring reform in those. And I think that would be beneficial to businesses and not.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. If we move ahead and look at the top three business environment constraints faced by businesses according to business size, like we previously discussed, we see that political instability is just present for all types of businesses, whether it's small, medium, or large businesses. Even though for smaller businesses, it is a larger concern because maybe they don't have the resources to maneuver around. Maybe they don't have the capital that, if everything is shut down because of instability or if they're not getting investment, larger businesses could perhaps still function, but smaller businesses would just close. For example, shop owners on the sides of roads, they can't really do anything about it compared to like large factory owners whose work will still more or less continue. But then we see that for medium and large corporations, tax rates and finance are problems that are more pertinent. So for larger firms, we see that tax rates are their biggest obstacle. And again, it makes sense. It's quite intuitive. Why? Because larger firms have to pay a lot of taxes. A lot of smaller firms don't really fall in a large tax bracket, so they don't have to worry about those. But then they do have to worry about access to finance, which is their second biggest obstacle. But still, it's not even half as many firms say it's their biggest problem as political instability, which is overwhelmingly for smaller firms. Again, if we again look at the breakdown of what the largest obstacles are for firms based on export characteristics of firms, we see that firms that export more, although political instability still does come into play for them, but not as much as those who operate domestically. So firms that are exporters, for them again tax rates are bigger problems, and we can also connect this to the previous slide, which says that larger companies worry about tax rates more because it is more likely that a large company will also be an exporter compared to a smaller company. Their second biggest worry is custom and trade regulations, which makes sense because again they do have to send goods out of the country, and there might be obstacles related to that. But for non-exporters, we see again that there's access to finance and corruption that are bigger problems compared to maybe customs or tax rates. So as we can see that political instability, it's prevalent through all types of business sizes and business types, and it is as of 2022, and COVID could have played a role in that as well. But whatever the reason, in Pakistan, it is one of the major obstacles that businesses report that they're facing.
I think, and this is pretty interesting to see because then policymakers or these businesses should have, catered approaches. For example, if the industry is one that exports a lot, then they should maybe give them tax incentives or something of that sort. And if there are non-exporter companies, they need some help with finances or anything like that. I think that can be given, or political instability should be catered to for these firms, actually for both exporter and non-exporter. But I think catered approaches to both these industries could really help them.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Amna, for joining me in this discussion about business environment obstacles.
I would like to add that Gallup Pakistan has not conducted the survey work. We are only analyzing the publicly disclosed data and reports provided by the World Bank. This is a public service activity done on individual initiative of Gallup Pakistan and not in any way endorsed or commissioned or supported by World Bank or its agents. Gallup Pakistan is not related to Gallup USA. We require that our service be credited fully as Gallup Pakistan and not Gallup or Gallup Poll. We disclaim any responsibility for service pertaining to Pakistani public opinion except those carried out by Gallup Pakistan, the Pakistani affiliate of Gallup International Association.